What's up guys, Larry Chen here. Welcome to another episode of Hoonigan Autofocus. We are out here at the new Blackout Garage.
Again.
Again.
Yep, checking it out. We have places come a long way. The last time you were here, we're still hanging a sign.
Yeah. So the story is I was picking up my 996 Turbo actually from Emotion Engineering.
Yeah, MBD.
My... That's the bastard child 911.
Yeah, okay,
Nobody
sure,
cares about that one. But my buddy Joey Seeley is like, hey, yeah, your buddy Christopher Forsberg is just down the street. Yeah, and we actually went to a tiki bar. Is that right? There's a tiki bar down the street.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, and then these guys hung out like, hey, you got to check out their shop. I'm like, literally, the shop is down the street. All right, I'm gonna go check it out. I came in here, everything's apart. You guys are putting all together.
We were still moving in, getting set up. But yeah, we're pretty dialed in now. So it's we got the shop together, we got the cars back together. Most importantly, this car was actually the last time I drove it. This is the kind of sad thing. Last time I drove this car was Gridlife, Colorado, and so it's been kind of sitting ever since.
So this is kind of the cool thing, because I work so closely with Chris, he's actually one of my oldest clients ever in the photography world. I actually have a chance to kind of like first dibs, right?
Yeah, I call Larry first.
Yeah, first dibs. So when this was brand new, raw carbon, this is a twin turbo 370Z. I actually had a chance to shoot it at Formula Drift, but I've also had a chance to shoot it in drift, and I've actually had a chance to ride in it too at Gridlife.
Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, when we first brought it out, it was when you shot it was at Texas Formula Drift, and that was only like the first or second time it had come out. I just finished the car out at MA Motorsports, and we took it to East Coast Bash. It was the first time I took it out and drifted it. We had it on display at Formula D, New Jersey, and there's a funny story there with this thing almost went onto the track. With one of our other friends, and then I loaded it up into my trailer and grabbed the Titan, and we were driving out to California. I was moving back to California from the East Coast, and so it was at Texas, and we took it out on track, got a couple quick shots, and Larry did a full photo shoot of it when it was still crispy and brand new.
So this is actually one of those builds where it actually started life out as a street car, right? It was a blue 370Z, I think it was automatic too,
yeah,
right?
It was automatic. It was fully stock. We did a couple videos with it as like a placeholder car, and I knew it was going to turn into a car. I didn't know exactly what yet, but what I wanted to do was this car was actually supposed to be our test mule for the VQ, and it just, things came up and we weren't able to get the built motor into it to start testing it before we actually had to put it into the Pro car. During that time, I was saying like we were moving out and everything was already done. We didn't have time to shake everything down, which, probably would have been beneficial looking back. But anyway, so I built this car, the twin turbo VQ, Fast Intentions twin turbo kit, and it was trying to go back to turbo setup because I had the V8s in not only the Infinity, but both of the Pro cars. And so I love turbos. I think they're awesome. It's a great way to make power. They sound freaking sweet, and the turbo technology was just getting better by the minute. And so we teamed up with people like Garrett and TurboSmart, and now we have pretty much every car in the fleet now, except for the 4-seater is turbocharged. So it's pretty rad.
I think part of it is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of changed with the times, like with Formula Drift evolving year after year.
We'll just blame Daigo. It's all Daigo's fault.
Yeah, it's Daigo's fault. All right. Thanks, Daigo.
Yeah.
With your
made everybody put turbos on their cars.
It's kind of funny because when I first laid eyes on that car, I think it was down at Super Street when it came in for technical inspection. I looked at the motor. I'm like, where's everything else?
Yeah, where is it?
It was so simple, and that's kind of what Daigo really likes. Simple builds, a lot of power, definitely the most power out of any Formula Drift car.
That I know of, yeah. At that point, absolutely. Dean might have the record right now, but Dean Kearney, that is. But yeah, Daigo was doing 1297. I remember that number vividly. Or maybe it was 1197. Maybe it was 1200. So never mind. I don't remember anything. So it was just an insane amount of wheel horsepower too, not just like a fictitious overall number, like 1197 or 1200, whatever, wheel horsepower. And yeah, huge turbo, straight six, nitrous, 2J setup, and it was nuts. And he kind of proved that you can be fast and have the drivability and the response of a big power turbo car, because up until then, the American way, everyone was just putting bigger and bigger V8s in their cars. And there was even some guys putting turbos on their V8s, but no small engines anymore.
And that was the thing, because there was a while with American drifting, with Formula Drift, it was the V8 sucks movement, right? Like, I hate V8s.
Yeah. Because every car was getting an LS.
Every car was a V8. And
I have a fun fact for you, actually.
Yeah.
My 2006, we built it in 05. 2006, the convertible car, the Sears car, 350Z was the first ever FD car to get a V8 that didn't come with one.
What's that? You can almost hear the bald eagles from within that thing.
Did you know that? And it wasn't an
Wait,
LS.
are you sure it wasn't Todd Ho's FC ARC-7?
I think that was the same year, but we built ours in the 05. Yeah, I think he brought his out in 06 as well.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't run 05.
I don't even know.
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, we built the car 05. We ran it in 06, and so yeah, it was and it was Nissan powered too. It wasn't just an LS. So yeah, stuff that thing in there. But yeah, he was early to it as well.
So how much power was your V8 car actually making right before you retired it?
At that, before I retired it, we were getting like 660 to the ground NA, but with nitrous, we were running a 250 shot of nitrous on it. So it was like, we didn't have like a full pull with the juice on it, but we were consuming 3 pounds of nitrous per lap at Irwindale. So we were changing bottles every 2 laps. It was mental. And so the amount of stress and effort, and especially with the engine, it was so custom built for that off-road short course program that we were like running out of parts. And so it came down to moving into 2017. I was moving back to East Coast. I was changing teams, and I either had to reinvest in the V8 and build new tensioners, gears, sprockets, chains, and all that to get those things running full competition steam again, or just redo the whole program. And so I was in the middle of building this car, and I had faith that the twin turbo package could work. People like Daigo and such were bringing out the 2Js, making great power, and I was like, you know what? We're gonna put a Nissan V6 back in the Nissan, and we're gonna run it. And so, like I said, we had some struggles at first. There was like a lot of miscommunication and a lot of assumptions. But I will say now, especially with the VR, it is the absolute most reliable engine program I've ever had.
Let's check out under the hood.
Yeah, so like I was saying, this was a street twin turbo kit from Fast Intentions that I modified. We pulled the inlets and outlets of the intercooler in and rotated them up to get the pipes a lot straighter and out of the wheel wells. I did the rear mount radiator, and we put this adorable little radiator up front. No, I'm just kidding, it's an oil cooler. Everybody asks that question. They're like, why is the rad so small? I'm like,
It's like drag racing, right? With drifting, you only do such a small...
It's only 30 seconds. Yeah. So yeah, we got a nice big oil cooler up front. And the engine, the funny part is this motor is bone stock, inside and out, top to bottom, cams, everything. And we did 650 to the ground with it. We did turn it down to like a little over 500 wheel for doing all the demos and such, but this thing has been ultra reliable. No issues, beating the crap out of it for 4 years now. And it's just goes to show that these engines can be reliable and can be strong and make a lot of good power. The torque numbers are insane. It's a 3.5 liter, from the factory. This is actually an HR motor. I swapped an HR from a 350 into it because the 3.7 from the 370Z has a variable valve lift, and so it makes the computer a little trickier, especially when you're running with the rev limiter so often. So we just kind of dumbed it down to variable timing, or variable duration, I should say, versus the variable lift. So a little simpler.
Wow, this is so crazy.
Yeah, so this car, like when we were building it, I wanted to do everything to like the pro level in case this car ever had to become the next pro car. Something like with what happened to Turk. It happens, people wreck cars. So I wanted to do it all proper so that if we ever did have to take it to competition or upgrade it to a competition car, it was all there. So doing things like, all the crimp line fittings and everything, just like the other cars, like the pro cars, built a little bulkhead, run the lines all through the chassis, and we got all the proper like radium fuel components. We have all the Part Shop Max suspension, the BC Racing coilovers, the Willwood Racing brakes, the exact same suspension as the Pro car, with the ZRs, all the adjustable points and everything else. So This car drives exactly like the Pro car. The only difference being it just makes about 500 less horsepower.
Right. Well, this seriously is probably one of the crazier drift cars that I've actually ridden in. It's just so cool to kind of see that you've also built it for demo usage. I mean, that's why you have it.
The main reason is to be a like carbon copy, no pun intended, of the race car, so that it is something that I can take out to the track. And not to fool anybody, but people get fooled very easily. They always think it's the same car. But it is a similar looking, similar laid out car, so that it's good practice. It's good for getting my Larry Chen photos all over the country, and getting features like this when the Pro car's on the road, and being able to do events when the Pro car's on the road. So the Pro car only runs like 8 times a year.
You bedazzled it pretty good.
I did,
with the lights and the tire flies.
Yeah.
Purposeful.
Yeah, because Gridlife Alpine Horizon was the first night event that they were going to do, night shift. And I was like, well, we got to tune this thing up. So yeah, we got some tire flies, we put some lighting on it, and it brought out some of the coolest photos I've ever seen. That one photo you took is like my absolute favorite.
Let me tell you, that honestly was one of my favorite photos of last year, because
that's it.
Because it's a storytelling photo, but it's also like, is this real life?
Yeah.
It looks like a rave, and part of it is because a rave was happening in the background.
In the background,
right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Gridlife. You could be partying, and then there's guys on track drifting. Mm-hmm. It's just so much crazy stuff happening at the same time. And in terms of storytelling, my favorite part is because you had the tire flies on here.
Yeah.
You could see that it was making basically
it was making
two full rotations.
Yeah, and the front tire was giving like this pattern, and the rear was doing like, it was so cool to see the difference.
And that's kind of the cool thing, is you could see how much faster the rear is spinning versus the front.
Yeah.
People just don't realize how much wheel speed you have when you're actually drifting.
It's an average number is like double ground speed, but it's usually a little less than that. When you're doing slow speed drifting, it can be double. High speed, when you're doing like 80 miles an hour, the rear wheels are like 120, 130. So, but like the low speed, they're just doubling down, and it's really cool. Like I said, I know the Gridlife guys really wanted to make that event pop off and be cool and different, and so I was like, well, let's add it to the track side too. So they got the lights over on the stage, we got the lights over on the track, and just like everybody's just having a party.
Let's check out the rear here.
Yeah, so
this is all.
So this was actually the first rear mount radiator setup that we ever did. And so Brian and I did this out at MA, and when we first went through it, we had we have a different style rad that we use now that is a little shorter, a little wider, so we can stand it up and get some of the space back. Because you can see with the lean back, we were trying to get better airflow to the rad, and we've over the years learned that it doesn't really make a difference. You can try and direct as much air as you want to this back radiator, but with it being a low pressure turbulent air zone over the back of the car, you can't just get high pressure forced through the rad. So you just rely on the fans mostly. So it's still a little dirty back here from, we did take it out and do some burnouts with it recently. I haven't had it out to the track. When I say I haven't driven it in forever, but with the different cars, the Infiniti and the Pro car, they're all kind of just orbiting around, going to different events, and so they don't each drive too often a year, but we're doing a lot of events a year, which is why we have the multiple cars. So the few things that I did do on this was, we put the battery back here too to offset the weight. We have, the water pump back here, so it's easy to access and work on, also helping pull the weight back. And then our fuel cell with the radium surge tank setup is, we're actually not allowed, per the FD rules, to cut this out, this little structure, because I would like to have this, basically a little further back, and would like to have this about, 6 inches back would be ideal. But since I can't remove that, we kind of have to pick front or back. So we did the fuel cell on the front side, but on the Pro car, we learned that that's just a little too far forward. We want a better weight percentage, so we actually have it behind that on the Pro car, and everything is kind of compact in this area a little bit more to help with that rear distribution.
That is crazy. So that's because on the stock 370Z, that is the actual hatch compartment, or the luggage compartment, right?
Yeah. So on the 350s, you'll see they have that big bar back here.
And did you have to keep that on your 350?
We were allowed to remove that from the 350 because that's essentially like a strut tower bar. But since this one ties into the floor and the frame rails so much, they asked us not to. So we're kind of stuck with this like in front or behind of that structure piece between the two cars. So, but like I said, like when we built this car, we learned a lot on weight placement and how to get things kind of laid out. And it did help to progress the new setup, you know, a lot faster. And you know, I really like the layout of this. It's easy to work on. It's nice and open and all of that. Pro car's a little more complicated. There's nitrous back here, there's a dry sump back there, and so this one is, like I said, a like an 80% version of the Pro car. It could be turned up if it ever had to be, if we ever wrecked it and had to take it to competition. But I mean, it's at this point now legal and capable of competing in FD if we had to. We'd turn the power up and push the limit on it, but we just finished putting a 4-speed dog box and a Winters quick change into it, so it now has the full drivetrain. It has the drive shaft shop, carbon drive shaft, and the big axles. So it is basically competition ready. We have all the Part Shop Max arms in the back, BC Racing coilovers, of course. And like I said, once again, this thing is basically as dialed to the Pro car as it can be without that final step of making 1,000 horsepower and the few components that we need to be able to do that. But chassis-wise, Dylan actually did the cage on this car, and it is by far my favorite cage of any of my cars. It is just super clean. He pushed this X-bar out really far out to get into the door pocket. The entire thing is MIG welded, but it's MIG welded perfectly. It's like the cleanest MIG welds I've ever seen. And as he does the A-pillars, if you look, he gets it tucked way up into the A-pillar. No gussets, no nothing. It's fully stitch welded all the way down and around. And I don't know anyone else that can pull it off that tight.
Wow. So does this kind of rear firewall sort of thing help with tire smoke a little bit?
Yeah, so that helps with the tire smoke, and it also allows us to have the fuel cell and the rad and everything else be exposed. So we don't have to put covers and everything over it, because this is now the actual block off from the cabin so that I am separated from all of those connections with a firewall. So it allows us to not have to box everything up and make it difficult to work on. But you can see like this cool little tunnel that Brian made, it runs all the way down this channel. He made that by hand, and it has the fittings come through the firewall and run down along the seat and then dip back in through that little bulkhead, which comes back here, back to that bulkhead. A little further in. See those guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. The same ones from up in the engine bay.
Yeah.
So that just feeds all the way through the car.
Wow. Let's take a look at the interior from here.
Yeah, so the interior on this one, like I totally love it. Once again, like everything was just a little bit better than the Pro car because it was like version 2. So I actually like took this whole dash piece apart and we put a piece of carbon in, capped off all the vents, capped off the pocket, put the Motec switch panel in there. And like I said, we now have the 4-speed in there, so it's just even stronger and better than ever. Little Motec dash floating on the column, custom steering column. Got my handbrake in here.
Wait, so this was actually built after your current Pro car?
Yeah. I mean, like the current Pro cars have been revised almost every year. We did a full teardown this off season, but that car was originally built in 2012, or for the 2012 season, and it is now the longest running FD car with 9 years now. So. But yeah, it continues to get revised and rebuilt and things get moved and whatnot. But this chassis I built in 2015. So everything is just, you know, it's 3 years. You learn a lot with like the cage placement and, you know, just like little things like this. I didn't want to build this car brand new for FD because, long story short, the FD cars are basically just bumper cars. They get, you know, smashed and dented and crushed all the time. And so I wanted to have an ultra clean copy of the Pro car instead of just making another car to smash up and then taking the Pro car and turning it into a demo car, because, you know, it just gets like, you know, there's just like little things that you would pick up on when this thing kind of sits out like at SEMA for a weekend, right? Versus like with the Pro car, it, you know, you find all these little like fixes and trackside fixes, you know, those things are basically like trophy trucks, you know, like you're just like you know, you chop that off and you weld a new one on, you keep going. As long as the thing still trues out straight, like that thing still wins events. So why would you replace it?
Plus, I mean, this one, really, you give so many rides. Pretty much you never ride alone.
Oh, never. No, these cars, there's no reason to be in these cars by yourself. So they're built to give rides. My favorite part about drifting is giving rides, because the reactions that you get off of people's faces is just incredible. They just lose it once they actually like feel the car drifting around going sideways. And to explain it to someone is like the first level. To see it live is like the second level, and then to ride in the car is like that's when you get them hooked.
It's the best view, honestly. Yeah, it's the best view.
Yeah, no, I love it. So this thing is cool and clean, and like I said, I kind of want to keep it that way, which is why this car has not been turned into a pro chassis, unless it has to, of course. But until then, we just keep this thing, I mean, well, other than being a little dusty, clean as a whistle. So.
Yeah, this thing is so cool. Let's go over kind of some of the changes that you've done that you could talk about on your pro car, if you don't mind.
We could talk about everything. Yeah. So, like I was saying, so I know we're joking about this being like the longest running drift car, and like they get smashed up and bashed up, but I mean, like, you know, you look at it and it's still clean and straight and everything's fine with it. Like we tore this thing all the way down to the chassis, just like we would if it was any other year chassis, to strip off old paint, to clean up old repairs, to make changes that we kind of discover along the way. And because since the cars are on the road more than they're here at the shop, we actually will be doing modifications at the track. We'll show up with like this next idea or this next thought or this other subframe or whatever. So it comes back in the off season and we kind of like finish, you know, those not to say finish them, but as in we'll more so like permanently install those modifications that we do. So like if a hose is just kind of like unioned and tied in, we relocate a tank somewhere. We'll build a better bracket for the tank. We'll mount it in that position because we feel like it does better there, the weight is better there, and we'll make a new hose that's the proper size, and you know, we're not daisy chaining different pieces together, because everyone's got a wild idea. When you only run them 8 times, it's like as soon as you come off the track, or even in the middle of like Friday qualifying, we're like, oh, like maybe for St. Louis we should like, you know, move the coolant tank over here and add an extra bleed port off the backside of the head or something like that. So you always get these ideas. And then we, in the off season, go through and pick the ones we want to keep and remove the ones that we don't. And so yeah, like we redid the whole front end on it. So it's all box tube, bolts in. And then this is our legal crash bar that's in front of that bolts into the frame rails. So everything is very modular and very easy to work on. And like I said, so these are things that we pick up on throughout the year. We're like, oh, like, you know, this should be, you know, this should bolt on here instead of back here, or both, or vice versa. And like, you know, this little brace we added to the car to help.
This is really cool.
Yeah, so yeah, just a little tube and bucket setup.
How neat it is. You don't actually get to see this normally. Because you have the bumper on. Like, this is such a cool setup.
Yeah, the
it's
filters
like the
just like
air.
Just hugging the intake. So through the grill, you got into the turbos and into the intercooler. It's just like all capped off. And when the bumper's actually on there, we have a splitter that comes out to it and runs back, and just like it just captures everything in here and just force feeds the whole car. So really makes it nice and clean, and you know, good flow, good cooling, and then nice fresh air.
That is really, really cool.
But yeah, some of the other mods that we did was I upgraded some of the fuel components to radium. We're working with them more heavily on the Pro car. That was another relationship that started on the demo cars, and as you know, we worked with them throughout the years, their products were just getting better and better, and so now we're applying them to the Pro car. So it's cool to see you know, upgrades like that. Another change similar to that is AEM electronics. We have been working with them on other builds. The wagon was powered by an AEM. We have been using AEM sensors on the cars, and now we have the AEM CD7 carbon dash for the car. So I actually had this out.
Yeah. That is really cool.
Oh, it is. It's super slick. Yeah, carbon housing.
The finish is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it has big, nice, easy to use buttons. It's got extra LEDs down here. It's got the regular LED light bar up here, and you can program this to do whatever you want. You could just have it show Larry Chen photos the whole time if you want. You don't even have to look at the gauges, but it's one of the most user-friendly dashes. So I wanted to get it, and we're actually playing around with a few add-ons for this year, which one of them is we're doing individual EGT sensors, all AEM sensors that will feed into it so we can monitor each cylinder to make sure that the engine is running perfectly balanced on all cylinders. Because when you get up to this type of power level, you always see an imperfection. One bank will work harder than the other, and one cylinder is always working the least, and one cylinder is always working the hardest. So trying to smooth that out, that's how you get your engines to last, because your car will be making great air-fuel ratios, your temperatures are down, but you will always have one piston, one hole, just working 20% harder than the last one. And that is where you get your failure points. So trimming the fuel down on that cylinder and bringing those temps down, and then finding the low point and balancing that out is what gets your engines to last.
This is what I love about drifting so much, because some guy in a stock S13 with a KA is pretty much doing the same thing that you're doing. They're getting sideways, they're having fun.
Yep.
You guys take it to not the next level, it's like the top. This is it.
I guess so.
It's really
it doesn't feel that way just based on like how we got started on this whole mess. I mean, I literally got started by I bought an RX-7 because Tony Angelo told me I should, and I started modifying it in my parents' barn on a dirt floor, not even kidding, starting to throw diesel truck turbos onto it, just trying to make more power. We started building our own exhaust manifolds for them. We're just sticking our own injectors into the intake manifold using compression fittings from Home Depot because we didn't know how to weld aluminum or get like injector bungs. So we were just literally getting compression fittings, crunching it down on the injector, drilling and tapping the hole, and JB welding those into it and making like 400 wheel horsepower. And that's how we made power back in like 2001 and 2.
And now look at you.
And now we have 1,500 horsepower drift cars, and I don't even know why.
I love that.
Yeah. But so like the big difference is, so like I was saying, that car being the first rear mount rad setup we did, it was a lot cleaner because there's a lot less going on. And this car, we've revised the back end of this car a couple times, but this I feel is the best setup that we've ever had. And that is, so like I was saying, we have a different rad now that is a little shorter, a little wider, so we can stand it up more to get some of the space back. We moved the fuel cell from up front to back here. The last 2 years, we actually had it back here, all the way back to this back bumper, trying to get the leverage to get the dig. Don't mind that. Here, let's add 2 in there. To get the leverage and the dig for the rear percentage ratio that we wanted. But what I think that was killing us, like everything is pros and cons, right? In life and with cars. So I think what that was doing, it was getting us ultra fast on the straights and on the throttle, but we could not slow the car down as well, especially because we aren't running the 295s and the 315s. It's a short wheelbase car, so that extra leverage back there was really making like a pendulum effect, and like the car would just want to keep rotating in those braking zones. And so I had to like really skate it in to get the car to actually ease down before I could pick up the throttle again. And you got these other guys that are basically able to chuck their car in, fully sideways, dumped out, rim on the ground, and being able to slow their cars down quickly. They need that momentum to dive into those braking corners, where my car will actually like glide through it better. So moving everything into a more condensed fashion, we moved the battery forward, we moved the fuel cell forward, we pulled this backwards. This used to be up here to help with compressing the weight over the axle versus behind the axle. And so now the rad used to be right here, and it only moved back a few inches to make all that space.
Wow. So this is actually a pretty small fuel cell then, huh?
Yeah, 6 gallons. So it's all that you need. We burn about 3 to 4 gallons on average. We will burn up to like 4.5 on some tracks in our 2 laps, that is. Because you have to be able to run 2 laps no matter what. You can't touch your car, you can't change your tires, you can't add fuel in less than 2 laps. And so 6 gallons is like the absolute minimal that I would feel comfortable with, because we'll burn that thing almost all the way out.
Yeah. Plus, if you're waiting on the line for whatever reason.
Yeah, if there's like a crash, like you gotta turn the car off. You can't just sit there and like you'll burn your fuel out. Yeah. So it's, yeah, we don't have caution laps, but we do have wrecks, and you have to shut down and conserve your fuel.
Yeah. And this this is the cool suit system, right? So if you're not running it, do you take that out?
Well, we run it all the time. Even on like a 60-degree day, like a cool day, like you're in the car and you're working hard, you got a lot of layers on, like you'll still build up a sweat even on like a nice cool day like today. But it's also helps with the weight. So we used to be 90 to 100 pounds at best over our minimal. Now we are 20 pounds over our minimal, which you actually have to carry some over the minimal, as in a pair of laps, your lead and follow lap, you will burn 20 pounds of rubber off the car, 10 pounds per tire in 2 laps, a couple pounds of nitrous, and about 15 pounds of fuel at minimal. So you're burning off 30 to 50 pounds in consumables.
Wow.
In 2 laps.
So that's kind of equivalent, or that's why, like in a lot of open wheel racing, they like to go pick up marbles before they come in for weighing, right?
Yeah.
So they go off into the marbles,
pick up a couple
bunch
rocks,
of things. Yeah.
kick them up in the wheel wells.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we actually have our tire to weight rules states that the car with me in it has to be no less than 2,900 pounds. And we scaled the car out, and it came out to 2,920, which is the lightest this car has been since we put the turbo package in it. When it was V8, it got a little lighter than that at one point. But with the turbo setup and the rear mount rad and everything in here, the cool suit, things that we didn't have before, it is now lighter than ever, which shows that our off-season rebuild was fully worth it. And we can now place our last like 20, 30 pounds of ballast to put us right at that like 2940, 2950 number to be safe with, you know, even like if you blow your taillights off and everything, you still have to hit that 2,900 number. So it's sketchy.
Crazy.
So you got to keep like a good balance of like 40, 50 pounds over. So we'll play with that weight wherever the car wants it to get corner balanced out just right. And yeah, other than that, I mean, like I was saying, you can see like this is a 9-year-old chassis, but it's all built new again.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for showing us.
No problem, man.
The updates. Congrats on the new shop. Definitely cannot wait to see you shred in this thing.
Dude, you're telling me. This thing is now fired up and running. It is a fresh engine from OCD Works, and we just did a couple break-ins with it, and so I'm just looking to get this thing fired up and on the track. Can't wait.
That's a wrap.